In exploring old movies of the past, I realize I've never really delved much into the world of the character Tarzan. So the time has finally come to check out the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan film of 1932, Tarzan The Ape Man. I know it's not the first Tarzan film, and it's certainly not the last. But when it comes to Tarzan, this role is generally identified with Johnny Weissmuller. He was a 28-year-old Olympic swimmer. In fact, there's a lot of swimming scenes in this film, and his career was pretty much based around this one particular role. And the original plan, as I understand it from MGM Studios, was that Tarzan was initially intended to be a sequel to the 1931 adventure film Trader Horn, a film that had extensive African footage. However, MGM just picked up the character Tarzan, they got the rights to it, they scrapped the sequel idea, and they just made this movie, and it went on to be a huge hit. It made about $1 million in profits. Back then, it was a lot of money. And both Johnny Weissmuller and actress Maureen O'Sullivan would go on to star in 5 sequels to this film. So getting into the details of the story, it opens up with some British explorers in Africa, and they want to find an ancient elephant burial ground. But when they try to get some information about it from the locals, the natives, they just react in terror, say that's not some place that you should go. Well, Maureen O'Sullivan plays the lovely Jane Parker, and she shows up in Africa looking for her father. She briefly meets with Harry Holt, who's played by Neil Hamilton, later to be Commissioner Gordon of the classic Batman show. That's pretty cool. Anyhow, she's eventually reunited with her father, James Parker, who's played by C. Aubrey Smith. And, of course, the character of Harry Holt is initially smitten with her, as you'd expect. But could there be other romance waiting for her off in the wilds of Africa? So off they go on their expedition to find this ivory and lost elephant burial ground. And on the way, they pass by lots and lots of stock footage of animals. They pass by a dangerous cliff drop-off, they steer past some deadly hippos, and after an encounter with some pygmy warriors, I think, Jane vanishes. So the expedition goes looking for her, but she's been taken away by Tarzan. And by the way, it's roughly 30 minutes into the film here before Tarzan actually shows up. And of course, there's not really much in terms of communication between the two because, he's Tarzan. He just drags her up into his treehouse, gives her a place to sleep while he goes off and sleeps on a branch. This isn't one of those films that really delves into origin story. He's just Tarzan. We don't really get into, how did he wind up there or anything like that. But you know what? It's fine. The next day they work on some of their communication, the Tarzan, Jane stuff. And then he abruptly heads out to rescue a baby elephant that was stuck in a trap. Then he moves on and engages in hand-to-hand combat with a wildebeest. So James and the other explorers eventually find her up in a tree and they help her down. And in the process, they shoot and kill his gorilla friend. And Tarzan, he's not too pleased with that. The explorers leave with Tarzan pursuing secretly. Now this explorer Harry, he's kind of a jerk. And, that's usually the formula in the Tarzan films where there's the dude who loves Jane and he's jealous of Tarzan. So he takes a shot at Tarzan with his rifle and gives him a head injury. And to make matters worse, the injured Tarzan gets attacked by a couple lions that he has to fight with. He's battered up, but a helpful elephant comes along and carries him away. Weak and wounded, Jane finds him and tends to his injuries and bandages up his head. And he recovers pretty quickly, and the two of them frolic around in Tarzan's pond, and they seem to be, building that relationship together like you would expect. But alas, Jane decides tearfully she needs to head back to the camp, and Tarzan returns her, and then he vanishes off into the jungle. So, shortly after, the explorers are captured by a band of, I think it's pygmy dwarf warriors, wasn't really clear on that, but Jane signals at the last minute to Cheetah, the friendly chimp, to go get Tarzan for help. And Cheetah runs and screams, and runs and screams, and screams and runs and screams a lot. Avoids dangerous animals, and soon Tarzan's on his way. And back at the lair of the evil dwarf people, they have the explorers as prisoners, and their plan is to lower them into this pit, kind of like the Rancor monster from Return of the Jedi, but instead it's a giant gorilla. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty silly, but anyhow, Jane falls into the pit. Harry tries to help, but come on, he's no match for the big monster gorilla. Well, can Tarzan show up in time to help? Is he going to be strong enough to beat this monstrous gorilla and the evil pygmy people? Well, you're going to have to watch this film to find out. So, some quick closing thoughts. This was neat to explore this old film of Johnny Weissmuller as Tarzan, and frankly, he plays the role well. Although how he's clean-shaven is a mystery, but whatever. He has that wild yet innocent personality to him, and he really does a convincing job. His interactions with Maureen O'Sullivan as Jane were sweet as well. I like their romance. And I'm really intrigued to see the sequels, to see how the two of them continue the story. And just a thought, but I do remember my introduction to the character of Tarzan wasn't necessarily from this, but it was actually from the Christopher Lambert Greystoke Tarzan film from the 80s. And, that's probably the first Tarzan I recall seeing, a little more gritty and realistic. There's Tarzan with the powerful French accent. He was my father, And of course, I've seen the Disney animated version. I don't remember much about it other than that the Gorillaz band was playing with Phil Collins percussion, and I don't remember much more beyond that. It was cool to actually see, this first film all the way through. It's funny also reading in the trivia that Ray Corrigan was credited as the ape, because I think he also played the ape in Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla. And also funny was reading the trivia that some of the monkeys used in this film got away, and they are still breeding in the wilderness of Silver Springs, which I guess is near Ocala, Florida. And as a Floridian, I wonder if perhaps they contribute to the legends of the mysterious skunk apes of the Everglades. Who knows? And despite some of the dated effects, this was still a pretty cool film. And I love seeing all the animals and how they interacted with Tarzan. And I've heard that the sequel, Tarzan and His Mate, is also supposed to be really good. So I'll be checking that out in the future, along with the other sequels. Anyhow, Tarzan the Ape Man was a fun film from 1932. It's worth checking out.